right, so welcome everyone. If you are returning to my show, you know that this is Before They Get Famous. I'm your host, Alana Tyson, where I'm bringing you all types of goodies, guests, and different stories and different visions. And we are starting 2021 off with a bang. I have Moustapha Halidou here, and we'll get into why he's here and all of that good stuff in a little bit. But before we do that, I'm just going to make sure that if you like the content that I'm giving, then just please make sure you share and like. We all know how important it is nowadays with social media to have your information kind of floating out there and sharing to the masses. Again, this is just before they get famous, and I'm just trying to bring stories to you of individuals whose names you do not know today, but who I believe, who SnazzyTV believes, indeed one day their name will be in lights at some point, or at some point they'll perhaps have a red carpet moment. And I'm really just trying to get these people just before that happens. So welcome, and if you're coming back, welcome back. So let's see, SnazzyTV is where you are going to see all of this goodness. You can go and check out all the previous episodes. This is episode 6 for the new year. And so we're just gonna keep rolling with that. So I've got, again, Moustapha Halidou here of Halidou Epics, and we're going to talk to him about an interesting project that he has going on. And I'll, in all transparency, I'm going to make sure I let everyone know that this is my brother-in-law. So there are no limits to who you might see on this show. And you know, he just happens to be involved in a project that I know that he's been working on for many, many years, or I believe it's been many, many years, couple years at least. But we'll get into all of that and kind of why he's on the show in a little bit. But in good, before they get famous fashion, we are going to do our shout outs real quick. And I'm just going to roll with it. You'll kind of get the gist of it when I get into it. So my shout outs for this episode, I have two. My first shout out is going to be the McBride sisters. And so if you're not familiar with them, they are a set of sisters who, I don't want to say, maybe separated at birth is not the right term, but these young ladies did not grow up together. Let's just say that they grew up on different continents, and they now own one of the largest Black-owned wine companies in the United States. And so they are the creators of the Black Girl Magic collection. They're pretty big, and I don't know if I can call them a small business at this point, but they have a really, really interesting story. So very inspiring story, a story that kind of involves family and putting pieces back together and really finding yourself and finding, something that resonates from the heart. And I love their product. They really do have a really good product. So that is my first shout out. And then my next shout out is going to be a young lady who's, if you didn't know her name before, you definitely know her name now. It is Amanda Gorman. Of course, I could not let this moment pass without putting a shout out to the inaugural poet, who she is at the tip of everyone's tongue right now. If you just Google Amanda, I think that will be the first name that pops up. She was just absolutely amazing. Of course, there's all types of stuff floating around on the internet about her now, but I just wanted to put my 2 cents in and say that she was definitely one of the highlights of the inauguration. There were a lot of highlights, but she was definitely one of them, and not just because she is a Black woman, but because she was just absolutely phenomenal. She was bold. Her poem was just inspiring and fearless and relevant and just amazing. And that is it for me. Moose, who are you shouting out?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I got a couple, and
Okay.
yes, that was amazing. She was off the hook. She was great.
Yeah, wasn't she? Yeah.
Oh man, yeah.
Okay. So
Talk
who
about
you
that.
got?
So my first one is actually, it's an organization out of DC. It's run by a friend of a friend, but somebody who I've hung out with, and really cool person, and it's called Dreaming Out Loud. And they're an organization. Their mission is to create economic opportunities for the DC metro region's marginalized communities through building a healthy, equitable food system. This includes rebuilding urban, community-based food systems through cooperative social enterprise by increasing access to healthy food, improving community health, supporting entrepreneurs and cooperatives from low-income communities, and creating opportunities for at-risk residents to earn sustainable family-supporting wages and build wealth. And just one example of an impact they've had is they've distributed more than 300,000 meals and thousands of pounds of groceries to 20 community-based sites across the district. So if you want to learn more about them, you can do so at dreamingoutloud.org. And then the second one is my wife. She does beautiful nature photography.
Yes.
Yeah, really, really cool stuff. And if anybody wants to check it out, I would strongly recommend you follow her on Instagram. And I think you'll really enjoy her work. Very awesome.
Awesome. Fantastic. All right. Those are our shout outs. Moose, you are the founder and owner of Halidou Epics. And with that, you are a videographer, a filmmaker, a documentarian. I've seen quite a bit of your work over the years and some of the projects that you've been able to put together. You've actually worked with me on some projects for SnazzyTV, indeed. And so there, however, is a project specifically that you're working on, which I will get into that a little bit later. But so if you could tell us a little bit about Halidou Epics.
Sure, yeah. Well, most of my work under Halidou Epics is I make my living doing video production, shooting and editing, mostly editing and motion graphics. I've really always been drawn to the post-production side of video production. And so I do a lot of corporate work, a lot of corporate marketing work, and just, I mean, honestly, in my range in my production has been all over the place. Lots of different, some nonprofits, but lots of different kinds of stuff. But my passion has always been in filmmaking and documentaries. I went to film school at New York Film Academy, and done a bunch of short films, and like I said, documentaries, some music videos. Yeah. And I use this stuff to pay the bills. So, but I love visual storytelling. I love the medium of visual storytelling. It's been my passion for a long time.
So Moose, you've been fortunate enough, when you say you do this to pay the bills, I think in your case, however, you actually love doing it. It's not like, right. So you're that's important for people to know. It's not like, oh, this is my day job, and I think at some point I might want to do something else. No, this is your something else. So you've been fortunate enough to actually be doing what you love for a living.
Yeah. I live and breathe it. I'm always on the computer, cutting up something, putting together some motion graphics. It's I mean, the corporate stuff, the freelance stuff and the corporate stuff it's still fun when I get to tell a story, but sometimes those stories aren't, it's not maybe quite as exciting as making a film or a documentary. So I'd like to get back more in the filmmaking and documentary space.
So Moose, just for those who are watching, in my audience and yours, well, your audience probably already knows this, but for mine, when you say post-production, what does that mean?
Basic editing, basic linear editing, but then also motion graphics work, and as well as audio, work, audio post-production work, touching up audio, cleaning up sound, removing background noise, adding bass when you need bass, and just all that kind of stuff, but also a heavy emphasis on motion graphics work. I love, I work in Adobe primarily, so like Adobe Premiere for editing and Adobe After Effects for motion graphics work, but piecing together the narrative of the story and, trying to deliver a message to people that hopefully is exciting and has some value, some inspiration. Crazy
right. And those are two very different industries. I want to make sure we realize that those are, because you can have the creative who is on I don't know which end it would be, but you have the front side, which is the writing. Let's say someone who writes a script And so you've got that creative aspect. But none of that can come to life until we have someone like you.
Yeah,
Right? Because
yeah,
otherwise it's just words on a page
yeah,
or
yeah.
ideas.
And the editor can make or break it. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, you have to have the, if you're shooting something, obviously you have to have the content has to be good. You have to have good shots, good acting, good everything. But even if everything is great on the front side, if the editor doesn't know what they're doing, they can mess it up, and at the same time they can save the project sometimes. So.
Yeah. And this is, I'm sorry to derail, but now I have a very specific question. Have you ever had an incident where you were given content that wasn't that great and told to make it great or turn it into something?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I guess you got to take every situation in its own merit. Sometimes that's impossible to do.
Right.
But sometimes you can pull a rabbit out of the hat. Sometimes you can work a little miracle here and there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that happens all the time. But you'd be surprised, sometimes you got to think out the box too. You got to ask for some other content that
Right.
that wasn't included, or can we go here, there, there with it. And but yeah, it's all part of the challenge, all part of the fun.
Yeah. Okay. What's the most interesting, aside from the project that you're working on now, which I'll get to that next, I promise. But I like to keep people in suspense. What is some of the more memorable projects you've worked on in the past?
A couple years ago, I had a chance to. I went to Africa went to 6 countries in Africa. About what is it? It's been about a year and a half now. With my boss, I work for an artist these days, primarily doing a lot of video art, digital art for him, and he has a project called Words that basically it's across 124 countries, all 7 continents, every region of the world. And I'm not going to go into the nitty gritty details of that project, but essentially it explores the concept of globalization on language and culture. And as part of that project, I went to 6 countries in Africa to shoot a bunch of interviews with people there. That was a ton of fun. Before that, about a year before that, I worked on Samantha Bee's Not the White House Correspondents' Dinner. That was kind of fun. I did some post-production work, editing in the background there. And I can go back to, I used to work for this marketing association in the cable industry. And at the height of Mad Men, the show Mad Men was on AMC, which is one of my favorite television shows. At the height of Mad Men, I produced a marketing awards competition within the cable industry. And the host of our award show was a gentleman named Ed Carroll, who was the president of Rainbow Networks, the parent company for AMC and IFC and all those things. So he was able to get, John Hamm, Don Draper, as well as the gentleman who plays Roger Sterling to do a shoot opening video for our award show. And we worked on the concept for that, as well as editing the piece. And so, when you get opportunities like that to see people who you really admire, whose work you love, and you get to I didn't get to meet them, but I edited their work and stuff that they've shot. So that was a lot of fun. I will also have to mention I freelanced for a while for the Washington football team. Formerly, we know the former name, but so that was a good thing that we got that name changed. But I grew up in the DC area, so I'm a big football fan, big Washington football team fan. So that was kind of fun to work there doing some post production on shows. Yeah. All
right, fantastic. So Moose, you are the real deal, man. You got a nice resume there. So when we kind of get into this topic here that we're about to get into, it'll be quite interesting, I think, for the audience. So to know your background and to kind of see how you've kind of shifted gears, well, maybe not shifted gears so much, but so let's get into it. Yeah. It's funny. In the last episode with the guest that I had on, we talked about evolution of the creative, right? So whether that's your brand or your projects or just you as a creative, how do we evolve to stay relevant, to stay current, or to meet your needs as you change as an individual. And I like to think that even with this show, I feel like every episode, I'm something's changing, right? So I've got my little setup here. I've got my little studio in the back, and I think if you look at any creative's journey, if you look at the beginning and you look at the today, it's like miles apart, right? So
Absolutely.
so let's get into you and kind of your latest project. So again, I'm going to kind of give a little brief rundown, and then I'll let you take it away. For the past few years, you've been working on a project. I'll call it a project where you are initially changing, or at least attempting to change, the way we view content, right? Kind of. And I don't know if that was your intention initially going into this, but I'm sure you'll tell us whether or not that was the intention. But you're doing that with the show Star Trek. And I know everybody's probably like, because when we put the teaser out there, we're like, Star Trek, what's that all about? But it's a lot bigger than just Star Trek, and you'll get into that. But so therein lies the intro. And so if you could tell us a little bit about what that is. So you're creating a database / video library using Star Trek as your initial theme, or your initial subject, I guess. So first, how long have you been working on this? And then you can kind of tell us what it is about.
8 years. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I started about 8 years ago. In my spare time, it's a kind of
course,
one of those things that's always in the background. So when I get a few hours here, a few hours there, if I'm not, where I'm not working on something else, which is hard to find that time, but when I do have the spare time, yeah, I'll get into it. I mean,
but yeah, just kind of give us a brief an intro of what it is you're creating, if you can, without giving too much away.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I know you've got some intellectual property things that you're trying to protect as well, so
yeah,
we'll be mindful of that.
Well, it didn't start out. It started out as a very narrowly focused thing. I guess I got to first just talk for a second about Star Trek, and it's my favorite film and television franchise. I fell in love with Star Trek when I was a kid. I've always been a fan of science fiction, and the idea of alien life. And I mean, I think those were the sort of things that drew me to the show originally when I was growing up. But as I started to get older, I started to realize that Star Trek was really on an underlying level. It was a show about exploring humanity, the human condition, our place in the cosmos, what it means to be human. And then on top of that, really got into a lot of the social, cultural, and political issues of the time. And I say the time because he started with the first series in the 60s. So that was talking about what was going on in the 60s. And then we had more shows that came out in the 90s, and they focused on a lot of the big themes, things that were happening in the 90s. But all along the road, whether it was issues of equality, sexism, racism, war and peace, nuclear weapons, I mean, just they run the whole gamut, LGBTQ, equality, and I just love the messages and themes. So about 8 years ago, I really got into this idea in my head that I wanted to make a documentary about the social, cultural, and political stories of Star Trek. As well as that, they have these conventions. You gotta be a real geek for this stuff.
Yeah.
They have these Star Trek conventions, and they have these contests where they have fan-made videos that explore different themes of Star Trek, different characters. You can enter them. If you win, maybe your video opens up for one of these our actors as they come out on stage to speak to the crowd. You get some money, and you get to get to network, get to meet some of those people.
Yes. And
so I really wanted to do some of those, and I wanted to make this documentary. But I thought, where's my palette? I mean, Star Trek. There's so many different shows, movies. There's a ton of content. And I said, how can I even begin to really make the kind of documentary I want to make if I don't have a palette that's organized? So I started saying, well, maybe I'll just go through the episodes and the movies, and I'll start cutting them up. I'll start editing out smaller clips from the larger shows and organizing them, categorizing them, in a way that would be really easy for me to then pull those clips in and start creating content. Into it, it occurred to me, and I really one of my friends, good buddies, actually was the first person to really put the thought in my head that this concept could apply to so many different franchises that are out there. So, if you're a Star Wars fan, maybe you want to easily be able to pull up all the clips, all the scenes where Jedi are getting trained, or the space battles, or
right.
Maybe you're a Sopranos fan and you geek out on Tony's mom.
I told you that we, even in our house, we were trying to find certain episodes of Martin for the 14-year-old who is, not that familiar with the show. And we're like, okay, you got to get into the show. It's like a cult classic. And we were having the hardest time just trying to pull up. We were like, okay, well, just try and find some stuff with Otis on it. Well, let's try and find stuff with Sinead in it. And we just gave up. We were just like, okay, that wasn't the episode I thought it was going to be. And so, YouTube wasn't it. Let's just say that. It wasn't helpful.
You just pull that. It would just be a different way for people to watch their favorite shows, explore their favorite characters, topics.
Yeah.
And Martin is another great example. Comedies. I mean, just and so it just, I don't know, it just started to snowball into this could be a really interesting thing.
Here's something that was very interesting that I learned as in preparation for this. I didn't realize Star Trek was only on for such a short time. It was only on for 3 seasons. Except they had a ton of episodes, right? Yeah. So they had 79 or 80 episodes, which is crazy. They must have been, I mean, you figure the average show now, right? Let's take Insecure, HBO. They had maybe 5 or 6, maybe 7 or 8 episodes per season.
Yeah.
These folks had a total of 79 episodes in just 3 seasons. And that's not even the spinoffs.
Yeah.
So I bring that up only to say how much, well, let me ask you this. First, are you including the spinoff shows?
I am. Now, wow. I haven't completed the process of categorizing all of those shows. I have completed the process of categorizing all of the original series as well as all of the films that featured the original series. And I've done quite a bit on The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, but not the whole series in their entirety. So I've got a little bit of almost everything in there. Discovery, not so much. That's a new one. But yeah. So I wanted it to be encompassing of the whole franchise. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, Moose, that is a big haul. That is a huge haul. But I commend you, and that's really what this show is all about. Again, in full transparency, when we talked prior, we talked about the idea that you well, maybe I'm not quite there yet. Maybe I don't know if I'm a good fit, a good subject for your show because they're not there yet. But I said, no, that's the beauty of Before They Get Famous. I want stories like yours. I want to share your experience because I can guarantee you there's somebody out there who's got some idea. To them, it sounds insane, right? To their friends and family, it probably sounds insane, right? But here you are doing it.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's fun. It's fun. It's got to be, it has to be fun first and foremost. And that's the main reason why I started doing it and why I continue to do it, because I have a good time doing it. And I learned, honestly, the methodology that I've developed to categorize this stuff has evolved over time. I feel like I've got it down to a science now. It wasn't always that way. In fact, I've had to go back and categorize some of the early episodes and films that I did, because I realized that over time, my methodology had evolved so much that I was categorizing things with a level of detail that you know, I just wasn't doing in the beginning. So I had to go back and redo some stuff. But that process, it just, you can't do it unless you're having a good time doing it. And by the way, I've also learned a ton about story structure through that process and doing it. Kind of have to, you know.
So
it's a good
Moose,
time.
you shared a story with me, and I have to definitely make sure we get this in there. You shared a story with me about Nichelle Nichols. I'll make sure I say her name right. Share that story, please, because I just absolutely love that story, and it really speaks to the idea of, you know, what is our purpose, right? What is your purpose as an actor? What is your purpose as an inspiration? So if you could share that, and for those who don't know, Nichelle Nichols played Uhura. Yes, she was the only Black female on the original series. So go ahead and share that story, which I absolutely loved.
Well, this story kind of speaks a little bit to the whole idea of tackling issues of racial equality and women's equality. They not only did it through the storytelling, but they also did it in the casting of the show. You know, they had this Black woman who was a lieutenant, you know, and the communications officer on the ship. Very important role. She wasn't a maid. You know, she was very. They had an Asian guy flying the ship. They had a Russian guy flying the ship. You know, they really went out of their way to create an ensemble that was not all white men. And so Nichelle Nichols plays with her. She was thinking about leaving the show after the first year to go back to Broadway. She did Broadway, and she wanted to do a show on Broadway. And the creator, Gene Roddenberry, begged her not to leave, and she told him that she'd, you know, give him some time, that she would give it some time to think about it. And while she was mulling her decision, she went to a fundraiser in Hollywood. And somebody said to her, you know, you got to meet one of your biggest fans wants to meet you. And she says, okay, great. She turns around and is surprised to see Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And you know, he is just, you know, the way she tells the story, he was enamored with her. He was lavishing with her with praise, loved Star Trek. And she told him, well, you know, I'm thinking about leaving. I think I'm going to leave. He convinced her not to. He told her that Star Trek was the only show that he and Coretta allowed their kids to watch. And it was because of her character, her place. You know, he said, for the first time, people are seeing Black people and a Black woman is an equal, you know, on the show. And that's just not something that was around, you know. And he said, you don't know how important it is that you're on that TV every week, playing that character, and you can't leave. And so what do you do when Martin Luther King tells you you can't go? Like, you gotta stay. So she went back and told Gene Roddenberry after this encounter that, you know, what had happened. And Gene Roddenberry says, God bless Dr. Martin Luther King. Somebody understands what I'm trying to do around here.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just a great
I had never heard that story, Moose, until you shared it with me. And so I thank you for sharing that. I just think that's incredible, right? Like it's one of my things that you just don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and the you know, the minds that are, you know, putting these kind of shows together. So yeah, you are schooling me here, my friend. You are schooling me, because I will say, and I'm significantly older than you, but you know, I watched Star Trek out of necessity. I was not, you know, into it. Like, I knew a lot of people that were like really Star Trek fans, and they watched it but for me, in my household, I grew up in a household full of girls, and you know, we weren't that big into it. But you know, again, you know, when you only had like maybe 5 channels, you know, you tend to watch what was on at the moment. So Moose, I'm going to ask you, why do you think Star Trek has such a following? Like, and I was trying not to say the word cult, but I can't think of a better word. But it's kind of like a cult following. Like, with Trekkies and like why that show? And maybe you've already explained all of that, but do you think that the people who are Trekkies, I feel like we really missed something big here. Like, especially like me, I'm thinking back and I'm like, wow, that show was really ahead of its time. I feel like I need to watch it all over again.
Yeah.
So why do you think that the Trekkies, why that?
It's interesting. I think for some people it really is about the science fiction and going to other planets and the idea that there's all these different races in the galaxy, and they really like that aspect of it. And then for some people, I think it's more about the exploration of humanity. It's about the human condition. And for some people, it's a good mixture of both. And some people, get the human exploration stuff subconsciously. Some people don't, not everybody sort of thinks of it on the surface, but I think the messages still resonate. For me, it's definitely just a combination of both. But one other important thing I should say about it is that if you think about most of the science fiction that's come out over the last 50 years, 60 years, that takes place in the future, almost all of it, the vast majority, has a very dark dystopian view of the future and what's going to happen. The world is usually falling apart.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, economic disparity and the environment's gone
like
mess.
Like the apocalypse
Right?
Yeah.
Star Trek is like one of the few franchises, I feel, science fiction franchises that has this, and it was Gene Roddenberry's vision, this very optimistic vision of the future, of humanity's future. This idea that in the future we will evolve. We will get beyond war, we'll get beyond poverty, we'll get beyond a lot of the crap that we have to deal with. And humanity, people will work for the betterment of humanity. And we'll have a higher evolved consciousness. And this idea is just, it's so uplifting. It's so nice. Nice thought. Now, maybe, I don't know, is it realistic? You look around the world today and think, man, I don't know if it's going to go that way. But it sure is a nice thought. And I think that more than anything else might be one of the reasons that so many people that are really into Star Trek are drawn to it. It's this uplifting, optimistic idea that we can become a better human race.
Better human race.
Yeah,
I like that.
Think that's what it comes down to.
I love that idea. And I think that you are definitely going to create some new fans.
I hope so. That'd be great.
Yeah, wouldn't it? Oh my goodness. I love the idea of introducing, the Gen Zs to, something new, or at least to them, it's new, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So have you given any thought to, I know this, you're probably like, no, don't ask me that. I can't even think of that far yet. Have you given any thought to what you might tackle next for this? Or right now you're just so focused on finishing this?
Right now where I'm at, my mental focus is, I want to show I want to sort of prove almost the versatility of the video library database I'm in the process of submitting videos on different characters and themes to the convention circuit for Star Trek. There's conventions there's a big one in Vegas coming up this summer, and they're all over the world. And so I want to try to win some of these competitions and get my videos in there to introduce some of these actors who I've grown up watching and just love to death. And I'm also working on a documentary about the social, cultural, and political themes. I've got a lot of it done already. I need to do some fan interviews, and COVID's made that a little bit tricky. I don't want to do the Zoom.
I know.
But my goal is to try to get, as I said, some of these videos out there, and especially if I can get them into some of these conventions, I feel like that'll give me a little bit of a better position to go to CBS, who of course owns the actual rights to the footage. I mean, I've done all the work in categorizing all this stuff, years and years of work. I mean, they could do it themselves, but it'll take them a while to get to where I am.
Right.
But I'd like to see if they want to partner on an app where we can actually bring this to the fans. I think it would create new fan engagement. I think it would, I mean, I think it could do a lot for the franchise. Now, that took a long time to figure out how to do that, but I got a system down now. And I think if I can get this one off the ground, I think the methodology behind it could be transferred to pretty much any show or movie franchise. There you got Marvel, you got the superhero, well, Batman, and I mean, this,
tons of the sky's the limit.
The sky's the limit. Yeah, the sky's the limit.
Disney.
So exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of where my focus is right now, and we'll see how it goes moving forward.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm happy for you. I am so glad that you were able to give me a moment of your time and give us, before they get famous, a moment of your time to sit down and kind of talk about what you have going on. One other question. What would you say is the biggest challenge? Because it's always important to talk about challenges with the creative audience. What would you say is one of the biggest challenges that you've faced during this, and have you overcome it, or how are you trying to overcome it?
Not getting burnt out. I was just saying, so the steam to keep moving forward, because you start to get to a place where it's like, gosh, I mean, is this all for nothing? Is this silly what I'm doing?
Oh, yeah. It's not. It's not. Don't think that. We're always our own worst critics. No, don't think that.
But you know what, though? I think sometimes you just get overwhelmed with the challenges of life and schedule and time and balancing family and work and passion projects and everything else, that it starts to weigh on you from time to time.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't give up. That is one of the things that I always love telling folks on this show. We're always our own worst critic, right? Whenever you're trying to do something creative, and even with me, with this show, I'm just kind of like, is this all for naught? Like, am I crazy to have this idea of, interviewing all these different people? And it's like, you've got all these other things on the side. And it's like, well, if it's making you happy, I say, keep going.
Absolutely.
And I see big things coming out of this. I really, really do. So,
I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate you to talk about it. It's fun. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Awesome. Well, folks, that kind of wraps things up. Thank you, Moustapha Halidou of Halidou Epics, for sitting down with Before They Get Famous to talk about his vision, his plan to take content consumption to a whole nother level. And I really, really, really can't wait to see it happen. You've been working on this for a long time, so I'm excited for you. All right.
Thank you.
Well, that is a wrap. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye-bye.